Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we extract the absolute best nuggets of insight from the sources you share with us.
Today, we are taking a really fascinating trip back.
We are back to the 80s and 90s, and we're diving deep into the world of collectible comics, but with a very specific focus. We're looking at a comparison that I think reveals two entirely different global philosophies.
Right. We're talking about the huge contrast between iconic Western titles, your Marvel, your DC, and the equally massive market for Asian manhua.
And this isn't just a theoretical exercise. Our whole analysis today is fueled by a very recent, very personal reflection.
Yeah, we're working entirely from notes posted just this month, January 2026, by a writer named Ang on their blog, kianmeng.org.
And the setup is just perfect. Aang was on a simple year-end photo walk, stumbles across these legacy copies of old comics, and it just sparks this huge bout of nostalgia.
And more importantly for us, a deep dive into what they're actually worth today.
Exactly. So our mission today is really a masterclass in collectible value for you. First, we need to frame that era, that explosive popularity.
How these two comic book worlds could even coexist.
Then we've got to analyze that universal experience Aang had, which is, why the passion eventually faded. Why do we stop?
And third, and this is the absolute core of it for me, we need to break down the two completely different, almost opposing sets of rules that govern their collectible value now.
What makes a Western comic valuable versus an Asian one? Let's figure it out. Okay, so let's set the scene. Let's step into that time period. We're talking the 80s and 90s.
It was a global comics boom. I mean, it really was.
In the West, you had superheroes hitting these massive cultural peaks. It was kind of the dawn of the modern blockbuster comic era.
And at the exact same time, in many parts of Asia, the output from Hong Kong manhua was just immense. The cultural footprint was huge.
It really was a golden age for both. But the way a kid would get into those two worlds, well, they couldn't have been more different.
And that's what's so fascinating in Ang's description. It comes down to economic and cultural accessibility.
How so?
Well, for a young fan, the Asian comics, the manhua, they were the everyday option. They were cheap, they came out all the time, and they were right there.
You mean literally right there on the street?
Literally. You could find them at any local newspaper stall, sometimes just sitting outside in stacks. They were treated as almost disposable,
It's part of the weekly allowance budget.
Precisely. It created this incredibly high circulation and just a very low barrier to entry. They were your daily reality.
Okay, so contrast that with the Western stuff, the imported Marvels and DCs.
Total opposite. Ang describes them as feeling like a premium luxury item.
So not at the corner store.
No way. You were sourcing them through mail orders. You were waiting weeks, maybe even months, for a big box to show up.
And the price.
Hefty price tag. You're dealing with import costs, exchange rates. It was a serious purchase.
That distinction really frames the initial psychological investment, doesn't it?
It does. The manhua was the friend you saw every week. The relationship was casual, constant.
But the Western comic, that was the aspirational treasure, the hard-to-get thing that felt like a special occasion.
A status symbol, even. You had to commit real time and real money just to have it. The initial joy was split between this easy consumption of local stuff and the prestige of the imported stuff.
And that emotional split is key because it totally dictates how we look at these things decades later. Now let's talk about something that bridges both of those worlds. The end of the journey.
Right. Ang noted that this whole thing, the reading, the collecting, it just stopped. It stopped in their mid-20s.
And that's a story I think anyone who's ever had a really deep hobby can relate to. We rarely just quit because we suddenly hate it.
No, it's almost never that. And Ang frames it as a natural progress towards adulthood.
A natural progress. What does that even mean?
Well, priorities shift. Career, family, finances, the big demanding things that just start to eat up all your energy.
But doesn't that phrase natural progress kind of ignore the sheer effort it takes to keep a hobby going? It sounds so passive, like it just fades away.
I think you're onto something. It's often an active battle against, for lack of a better word, logistics.
Right. If the passion is still there, what's the thing that actually kills the fun?
This is where Ang's specific anecdote is so telling. They mentioned they used to love going to anime fairs.
Okay.
Specifically to support local independent artists. A joyful, supportive thing to do.
Sounds great.
Yet, Ang writes that now those exact same activities feel more taxing, than exciting. And they add, imagine navigating through the crowd.
There it is. That is the perfect encapsulation of adult tension.
Exactly.
It's not that you lost interest in the art or the community, it's the logistical toll. The transaction cost of just participating becomes way too high.
The thought of spending a whole Saturday fighting crowds, finding parking.
All for a few hours of fun, yeah.
Yeah.
And you measure that against this infinite to-do list you have as an adult.
Your adult brain starts doing this like cost-benefit analysis on your own free time, and suddenly the friction of the crowd, the travel, the time, it just outweighs the emotional reward.
The logistics become the enemy of the passion.
That's it. It's a powerful thing for you, the listener, to think about, when did your favorite, once effortless hobbies start to feel like, well, like work?
That's a fantastic takeaway. It's not always this big philosophical shift. It's often just a rational reassessment of effort versus reward in a life where your resources are suddenly very scarce. But Aang didn't just stumble on these old comics and feel nostalgic. They did the research.
Which prompts the very natural, very adult question, what are they worth now?
And this is where we get to the core of this deep dive. Because the answer to that question depends entirely on where the comic came from.
Completely. The rules that govern what makes a comic a high-value collectible are just worlds apart.
So let's start with the familiar territory, the Western comic market, your Marvel, your DC. When collectors talk about a comic being worth a fortune, what are they actually talking about?
The source highlighted 3 main drivers, and they all lean toward specific, verifiable scarcity and archival perfection. Rule number 1. Value is overwhelmingly driven by first character appearances.
The moment of creation.
That's it. The single issue that introduces a major hero or a major villain. That is paramount. You are literally collecting a historical origin moment.
Okay, so that's number 1. What's 2?
Rule 2 is artist signatures. They dramatically boost the value, as long as they're properly verified, of course.
Of course.
But the third rule is, it's maybe the most defining feature of the modern Western market. Slabbed quality.
Slabbed quality. Okay, for anyone who's not deep in this world, let's just clarify. That means the comic has been professionally graded for its condition.
Right, on a really strict 1 to 10 scale, and then it's sealed in a hard plastic archival holder. They call it a slab.
And this is done by a third-party company like a CGC or CBCS.
Exactly. And that process, it standardizes the condition. It guarantees that the numerical grade, say a 9.8 near mint, is verifiable and, more importantly, permanent. The value is literally locked inside that case.
So the condition is everything. The chase is for absolute perfection.
It's clinical. It's archival. Did this character appear in this one specific issue? And is that issue graded to near perfection? It's a sprint to get a pristine copy of one key moment.
It's scarcity tied to a specific date and a condition guaranteed by an outside authority.
Precisely.
Now, take that entire thought process and let's transition completely over to the Asian market, to the manhwa collection that Aang also had.
This is where it gets really interesting. The moment Aang started researching the value here, all those Western rules, they mostly went right out the window.
It's a crucial difference.
It is. The rules for manhwa collectability are driven by a totally different appreciation of artistry and a completely different kind of scarcity.
Okay, break it down for us.
Aang's research pointed to 4 key criteria, and it starts with the creator.
Not the character.
Not primarily, no. Rule number 1, the reputation of the artist is central. The creator's legacy, their influence, their mastery, that's what drives the value more than a character's first appearance.
So you're collecting the artist's career, not just the character's origin.
You are. Rule number 2 is, of course, overall quality. That's universal. But this is where the massive divergence really happens.
Okay.
Rule number 3 is the complete set.
The complete set.
And this is a monumental factor in manhwa collecting. Aang really emphasized why this is such a Herculean feat.
Why? I mean, collecting a full run of anything is hard.
Right, but think about the release schedule. Western comics, the big flagship titles, they historically had a monthly cadence.
12 issues a year.
12 issues a year to track down. The longest classic runs might top out around, 300, maybe 500 issues over decades?
But manhwa was totally different.
They were weekly.
Weekly.
Just think about the logistics of that. If a popular manhwa ran for just 5 years, that's 260 issues. 10 years, you're at over 500 issues.
Wow.
Trying to collect every single weekly issue, making sure none were missed or damaged back when they were printed cheaply, it's exponentially harder than finding one single key monthly issue, no matter how rare that Western key is.
Wait, so that flips the entire logic on its head. The Western collector is hunting for a single, perfect historical snapshot, the first appearance, and they'll pay millions for that one pristine artifact.
Yes.
But the manhwa collector is focused on the marathon, the sheer dedication needed to get the complete run of hundreds and hundreds of issues.
It forces a completely different definition of scarcity. The scarcity isn't defined by the initial print run of one issue. It's defined by the collector's dedication and the insane logistical difficulty of keeping a perfect, complete set together.
The value is tied directly to the comprehensive effort.
It is. And finally, rule number 4 for manhwa focuses on production. Special editions, specifically the ones that used early print techniques like metallic or holographic covers.
What are those?
Because they're prized for representing technical artistry and rarity in the physical production itself. It's an appreciation for the object.
So if we synthesize all this, the fundamental difference in what the market focuses on is,
Yeah,
it's profound.
it really is.
Western collectors are focused on the archival, the grading, the perfection, the scarcity linked to one single character moment. It's a very clean, almost financial formula.
Whereas manhwa collectors focus more on the creator's legacy, the artistry, and the overwhelming, difficult achievement of just getting it all, of completeness.
It's a value system that respects the marathon, not the sprint. It respects the dedicated follower and the physical reality of a weekly print schedule.
Perfectly put.
So, okay, we've learned the rules. Aang now knows that some of those boxes might hold slab-worthy, character-driven riches.
And others hold hundreds of issues whose value depends entirely on whether that one obscure weekly release from, say, 1992 is also in the box.
So what does all this financial knowledge do to the sentimental artifacts?
And that's where we connect it all back to the emotional reality. Aang's conclusion here is beautifully simple.
Which is?
That regardless of the market rules, regardless of the high financial value or even the lack of it, whether the comics are ultimately worth a fortune or just a few ringgits, their real worth hasn't changed at all.
They maintain their primary value as sentimental artifacts of our younger years.
Exactly. That initial emotional connection, the memory of that cheap weekly read versus that expensive aspirational import, it completely trumps the cold math of the modern collecting market.
It's the ultimate perspective check. And it brings us right back to that adult friction point we were talking about earlier.
It does. The current market might prize the slabbed perfection of a first appearance or the completeness of a weekly run, but the initial effortless joy of just reading them is what Aang truly rediscovered and valued.
You can see the tension so clearly now. On one side, the sealed, highly graded luxury item of the Western market.
And on the other, the artist-driven, complete-set logistical challenge of the Asian market. Both are valid paths to financial value.
But the personal conflict is what the real thought experiment is for all of us. Aang stepped away from the hobby because it became taxing.
And now, armed with the new knowledge that some of these comics might actually be worth a fortune, the question has to be faced.
Does knowing the financial value just enhance the memory of a well-spent youth?
Or does the pursuit of that fortune, the logistics of grading, of selling, of hunting down that final missing weekly issue, become a burden that turns a simple sentimental artifact right back into a demanding, taxing adult logistical problem?
And that's something for you to mull over as you maybe go and revisit your own youthful treasures.